The orbital city of Novaris hung like a jewel above the surface of the blue-green planet Lyria. Its towering structures sparkled in the sun's glare, and skyways connected massive spires that reached toward the endless black of space. In this city, wealth was power, and power was absolute. Among the powerful, one name made everyone hold their breath: Althea Vey. Althea was the owner of Vey Corp, the most influential corporation in the known star systems. She had built her empire from nothing, rising from a small engineer to a business magnate who could decide the fate of entire colonies with a single command. Her presence in a room was enough to silence even the most confident of executives. People admired her brilliance, yes, but they feared her more. On this day, the boardroom of Astra Prime was tense with anticipation. It floated in geostationary orbit, a shining structure of steel and glass, visible from the planet below like a second moon. Inside, the massive chamber was filled with the city's top minds. Executives, engineers, advisors, and project leaders sat in chairs, made of polished metal and leather, all waiting for Althea to arrive. Their faces were masks of professionalism, but their hands betrayed them, tapping nervously on holotables, smoothing wrinkles in their clothes, clenching and unclenching fingers. The room's atmosphere was thick with fear and expectation. Whispers moved like tiny currents, careful to remain inaudible to the sharp ears of the security drones that hovered silently in corners. No one dared speak out of turn. Althea's reputation for ruthlessness was well known. She had fired entire divisions in moments of anger, and replaced them without hesitation. Those who survived her scrutiny were either geniuses or lucky. Among the waiting executives sat Jackson Riel, a single father recently promoted to the board for his work in planetary terraforming. Unlike the others, Jackson's nerves did not tremble with fear. He did not wear his anxiety on his sleeve. He knew the consequences of missteps, certainly, but he also understood something the others had forgotten. Courage could change the game. His daughter, Lyra, had been his reason to strive, to improve, to survive. Every innovation, every project he touched, carried her future in it. As Jackson waited, he observed the room. The room smelled faintly of recycled air and expensive coffee. Holoscreens floated above polished tables, projecting charts of planetary resources, economic forecasts, and colonization plans. The walls, made of a translucent alloy, reflected the pale sunlight of Lyria, casting ghostly patterns across the floor. The other executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, glancing at one another, trying to anticipate the inevitable storm that would enter through the heavy doors. And then she arrived. Althea Vey stepped into the room like a star appearing in a dark sky. Her presence was magnetic and terrifying all at once. She wore a tailored silver suit that shimmered with embedded nanofibers, making her look almost untouchable. Her hair, black as a void in space, framed a face sharp and calculating, with eyes that seemed to pierce directly into the hearts of everyone present. The room went silent instantly, as though all air had been sucked out by her mere existence. "Good morning," she said, her voice smooth but commanding, a sound that could comfort or crush in equal measure. "I trust everyone is ready to discuss the next stage of expansion." A nervous murmur spread through the room. Executives exchanged glances, waiting for someone else to start the conversation. No one moved. No one dared. Althea's gaze swept across the boardroom, sharp and assessing, lingering just long enough to make every person squirm internally. Jackson remained still, his posture relaxed, though his mind raced. He had studied Althea, observed her in meetings before, and knew her methods. She was brilliant, but she relied on fear too much. Fear could blind her to reason if someone stepped forward with clarity. And he intended to be that someone. But not yet. The first topic of discussion appeared on the holo screen: the colonization of a newly discovered planet, Lythera 9. Its soil was fertile, its atmosphere breathable with minimal processing, and its resources abundant. A dream project for any corporation, but also a potential nightmare if mismanaged. Althea leaned forward slightly, hands resting on the sleek table, and asked for progress reports. The junior engineer for the project, a young woman named Mara, began to speak. She explained the projected timelines, the terraforming methods, and potential complications. Her voice wavered slightly, and her confidence faltered under Althea's piercing scrutiny. Althea's eyes narrowed, and her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're behind schedule," Althea said, her tone calm but cutting. "Explain why I should not replace your entire team with one that can meet expectations." The room grew colder. A few executives swallowed hard, hoping someone else would respond. Mara's hands trembled as she attempted to justify the delays. Her words stumbled, and Althea's frown deepened. Jackson watched carefully. He noticed the subtle panic rising in Mara's eyes, the same panic he had seen in countless meetings before. He also noticed Althea's irritation, a shift from curiosity to impatience. If the conversation continued in this way, no solutions would be discussed, and valuable time would be wasted. The board members all around him shifted uneasily. Some clenched fists beneath the table. A few quietly muttered, "She's going to explode." But no one dared speak aloud. Fear had created a cage in the room, a barrier to reason and creativity. Jackson took a slow breath. He had seen enough. He understood that the real challenge wasn't the project, the deadlines, or even Althea herself. It was the fear that had paralyzed everyone else. Courage, he realized, was not loud or arrogant. It was calm, firm, and deliberate. But he did not speak yet. First, he let Mara finish, letting her voice carry the weight of her truth. Then, he would act. Althea leaned back slightly, tapping a finger against the table, her expression a mix of curiosity and irritation. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. The other executives dared not interrupt, though internally they were screaming for someone to intervene. Jackson glanced once more at the holo screen, at the detailed resource calculations, at the potential lives that could benefit from proper planning. He thought of Lyra, imagining her one day walking among thriving colonies, a future built on reason, courage, and human determination. That vision gave him clarity. The first sparks of movement came in the form of subtle shifts, executives adjusting their seats, Mara's shoulders rising slightly as she waited for judgment, but the storm had yet to break. Althea leaned forward again, her gaze sweeping the room. "I will not tolerate excuses," she said, her voice carrying effortlessly to every corner of the chamber. "If anyone here cannot meet the standards I expect, leave now, and I will find someone who can." The room was frozen. Everyone's mind screamed to speak, to defend, to explain, but fear held them hostage. Jackson realized something crucial in that moment. Humanity had faced worse. Humans had survived storms, wars, and cosmic disasters not because of fear, but because of courage, reason, calm in chaos. That was his advantage. That was what could change this moment. And so he leaned back slightly in his chair, folded his hands calmly, and prepared himself for what no one else dared. The room remained tense, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Executives shifted nervously in their seats, eyes darting toward one another, seeking guidance, seeking courage that none of them dared display. Althea Vey's gaze swept over them like a sharp blade, and the silence was deafening. Jackson Riel sat quietly, his mind focused, his posture relaxed. To anyone watching, he seemed calm, almost indifferent. But inside, he was alive with purpose. He knew the room was paralyzed by fear, and he knew that fear would make even the brightest minds falter. Yet he also knew that clear thought and calm reasoning could cut through the tension like a sword. Mara, the young engineer, finally finished her report. Her voice had regained some strength, but her hands trembled slightly as she gestured toward the floating holographic chart. "The project's progress is within projected limits," she said softly. "We have identified minor setbacks in the environmental stabilization of Lithera 9, but these can be corrected within the next 3 standard cycles." Althea's eyes narrowed. "Minor setbacks?" "This is not minor," she said sharply, her tone carrying across the room. "We are discussing entire ecosystems, entire colonies. Minor setbacks here could mean disasters there. I want a plan, not excuses." A few executives swallowed hard, afraid to speak. Fear had gripped them like ice. They knew that any misstep could result in professional ruin, or worse, public humiliation. Althea Vey had a reputation for dismantling careers in moments of frustration, and no one wanted to be next. Jackson watched Mara closely. He understood her fear. It was not just for her own career, but for the lives that depended on these decisions. Colonists would eventually inhabit Lithera 9. They would rely on careful planning, smart resource allocation, and intelligent leadership. Mistakes were not just mistakes, they could cost lives. Althea leaned forward, tapping her metallic cuff against the table, making a metallic click that resonated through the chamber. "Explain," she demanded, step by step. "Why have you not solved the environmental stabilization problem? I need facts, not excuses." Mara opened her mouth, then hesitated. Her voice faltered. We have been monitoring atmospheric balance. But the terraforming process is slower than anticipated. We are adjusting the biotic regulators, but it takes time." Her words trailed off as her confidence faltered. The silence returned. The executives shifted uncomfortably, afraid to interrupt. Some whispered to one another, but the whispers were cautious, careful, almost prayer-like. Jackson exhaled slowly. He knew the critical moment had arrived. The moment when someone had to step forward, when reason had to replace fear. He leaned slightly forward in his chair, his hands folded calmly on the holotable. The room seemed to pulse with anticipation. Everyone sensed the tension, none more than Althea. Althea's eyes flicked toward him. She had noticed him observing quietly, calmly. It was unusual for a junior member to remain composed, while the room trembled around them. "Do you have something to add, Mr. Riel?" she asked, her tone neutral, but carrying the weight of command. A ripple of surprise passed through the room. No one expected anyone to speak, especially not a single father. Recently promoted engineer, seated quietly among titans of industry. Every eye turned toward him. The air felt thicker. Jackson met Althea's gaze calmly. His voice was quiet, steady, yet carried a weight that demanded attention. "Ma'am, please take your seat," he said. The room froze. Murmurs of shock moved like whispers across the chamber. Executives exchanged incredulous glances. Did he just tell Althea Vey to take her seat? The audacity, the nerve, sent ripples of disbelief through everyone present. Althea's expression shifted. For the first time, she paused, her sharp gaze softening into something closer to curiosity. No one had dared speak to her in such a manner before. She studied Jackson carefully. His calmness, his composure, and the firmness of his voice contrasted sharply with the tremors of fear in everyone else. Jackson continued, his voice deliberate. "The project is on track. Minor adjustments are being made, but they are controlled, manageable, and well within operational parameters. I believe we can move forward without the risk of catastrophic error." The room remained silent. Althea leaned back slightly in her chair, her eyes never leaving his. Jackson could feel the weight of her scrutiny, but he did not flinch. He had prepared for this moment. His reasoning was clear, his logic sound, and his goal was not to challenge authority but to prevent fear from obstructing reason. Althea's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly. But it was a signs that Jackson had learned to read over countless hours studying human behavior. She was intrigued. Not threatened, not angry, intrigued. "Go on," she said, her tone measured now, no longer laced with threat. "Explain your plan." Jackson leaned forward, bringing up a holographic projection of Lithera 9. The planet rotated slowly in the air above the table, showing swirls of clouds, emerging rivers, and patches of fertile land. "The atmospheric regulators have been recalibrated," he began. "We have introduced biotic stabilizers gradually. The delay you see is not a failure. It is a controlled process. Rapid changes would destabilize ecosystems and could compromise the safety of future colonists. He continued, pointing to specific areas on the projection. Here, in the southern plains, we anticipate initial crop growth within 3 cycles. Here, in the northern river basins, aquatic life will stabilize naturally due to the controlled oxygenation process. All systems have fail-safes. Redundancy has been built into every critical function. We are monitoring every variable, and we have contingency plans in place for unexpected developments. The room was still, but the tension began to shift. Executives leaned closer, intrigued. Some whispered quietly, nodding at the precision of his words. Mara, who had been trembling moments ago, allowed herself a small smile of relief. Althea's gaze sharpened again, but this time it was analytical, not threatening. "Your confidence is noted," she said, "but confidence alone does not prevent failure. How do you ensure that your predictions are accurate?" 8. Jackson met her gaze steadily. "By using data, simulations, and reason rather than fear. We monitor variables continuously, adjust based on results, and prioritize human safety above deadlines. Rushing a solution would create more problems than it solves. This is how we ensure accuracy." Althea studied him for a long moment. Then she leaned back, her hands resting lightly on the table. The room was silent, but the tension had changed. Fear had lessened, replaced by curiosity, and even a hint of respect. The other executives began to realize something profound. Courage, when paired with clarity and logic, could challenge even the most intimidating presence. They had been paralyzed by fear, but Jackson's calm reasoning had shifted the room. Suddenly, ideas could be spoken, questions could be asked, and reason could replace intimidation. Althea spoke again, her voice calm. "Very well, Mr. Riel. Continue with your plan. Keep monitoring the progress, and report any significant changes immediately. I will not interfere unless absolutely necessary." A collective exhale swept through the room. Executives relaxed slightly in their seats, some leaning back, others straightening with renewed purpose. The fear that had dominated the boardroom was dissipating, replaced by focus and determination. Jackson allowed himself a brief glance at Mara, who nodded at him in silent gratitude. This small victory, he knew, was not about recognition or personal glory. It was about ensuring the project succeeded, about protecting lives, and about proving that humanity's greatest strength lay not in wealth or fear, but in courage and reason. As the meeting continued, discussions flowed more freely. Executives began to speak openly, proposing ideas and adjustments, without the usual hesitation. Althea, intrigued by Jackson's approach, listened attentively, offering insights rather than demands. The balance of power had shifted, if only slightly, and the ripple of change was visible to all. For Jackson, the victory was quiet, understated, but meaningful. He had reminded everyone present that fear was not the only path, that courage and calm reasoning could shape outcomes, even in the presence of overwhelming power. And as the meeting drew to a close, he felt the first spark of hope, a reminder that humanity, even in the vast expanse of space, could stand strong against intimidation and uncertainty. The boardroom of Astra Prime had changed, but only slightly. The air was still thick with anticipation. Yet the oppressive weight of fear had lifted just enough for reason to move forward. Jackson Riel's calm words had broken a silent barrier. But the meeting was far from over. The stakes of the Lythera 9 project were enormous, and the success or failure of the colonization plan depended on careful decisions in this very room. Althea Vey leaned back in her chair, her fingers lightly tapping against the metallic table. Her sharp eyes, which had once intimidated the entire room, now studied Jackson with something closer to curiosity. She had faced countless engineers, executives, and experts over decades, yet few had ever dared speak to her with calm confidence. Most flinched, some faltered, but Jackson had done neither. Instead, he had commanded respect with logic and composure. "Mr. Riel," she said, her voice calm but deliberate. "You have the floor. Continue explaining your plan." Jackson nodded, projecting the holographic image of Lythera 9 above the table. The planet rotated slowly, rivers winding through valleys, clouds drifting across plains, and forests spreading across fertile lands. The northern hemisphere, he began, has naturally occurring oxygen-rich zones. These areas will be critical in establishing the first sustainable settlements. We plan to build habitats here first, as they require the least environmental modification. Once established, they will serve as a model for further expansion. He paused, letting his words sink in. Executives leaned forward, intrigued. This was not the usual fear-driven presentation they were accustomed to. It was calm, clear, and logical. No panic, no exaggeration, only solutions. Althea's brow furrowed slightly. "And the southern hemisphere?" she asked. "The reports indicate unstable soil and fluctuating temperatures. How do you intend to manage that?" Jackson pointed to specific zones highlighted in the holographic map. "We have introduced temperature-stabilizing systems that monitor the atmosphere in real time. Soil reinforcement has been applied using sustainable, non-invasive methods. This ensures minimal disruption to the natural ecosystems. In addition, biotic regulators will gradually enhance flora and fauna adaptation. All procedures are reversible in case unexpected changes occur." A few murmurs ran through the room. Even the most senior executives were impressed by the level of detail. Many had spoken before, only to be dismissed or overridden by Althea's commanding authority. Jackson's approach was different, calm, precise, and focused entirely on results, rather than impressing the room. Althea leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. "And what about human safety?" she asked, her voice sharp again. "I do not want a repeat of past mistakes. Lives are at stake. How can you guarantee safety?" Jackson met her gaze steadily. "We cannot guarantee perfection," he said, "but we can minimize risks. Every habitat is equipped with environmental fail-safes. Emergency protocols have been tested in simulation and in controlled field conditions. Our approach prioritizes gradual adaptation rather than rapid change, which reduces the likelihood of systemic failure. Safety, efficiency, and sustainability are all integrated into every step." The room was quiet. Executives, who had spent years bowing to fear, were now listening intently. The shift was subtle but profound. Courage, combined with reasoning, had altered the balance of power in the room. Althea's eyes narrowed slightly. "Your confidence is impressive, Mr. Riel. But confidence alone is not enough. What makes you think your plan will succeed where others have failed?" Jackson leaned forward slightly, his voice steady. "Because we are not relying on fear or speed. We rely on data, monitoring, and human judgment. The human mind can adapt to challenges, predict variables, and respond creatively. Machines are tools, but humans are problem solvers. We combine both, and that combination ensures adaptability where others may fail." For a moment, the room felt lighter. Althea's expression softened, as though she were reconsidering her assumptions. She had spent years wielding fear as a tool. Yet here was a man who refused to be intimidated, and whose method produced results. This was something she could respect, even if she would never admit it aloud. "Very well," she said finally. "Proceed with your plan. But know this: I will be watching every stage closely. One significant failure, and I will not hesitate to act." Jackson inclined his head. "Understood, ma'am." The tension that had dominated the room for hours began to dissolve. Executives leaned forward in their seats, ready to contribute ideas, discuss solutions, and collaborate. Jackson's intervention had shifted the meeting from fear-driven paralysis to reason-driven discussion. The power of calm courage had demonstrated that fear was not the only path to influence, even in a room dominated by one of the most powerful humans in the galaxy. Mara, who had begun the meeting nearly in tears, now stood taller. I think we should adjust the water purification systems," she said, pointing at a specific sector on the holographic display. It will improve crop growth by at least 15%. Althea's eyes flicked toward her, then back to Jackson. She said nothing, merely observed. For the first time, the young engineer's ideas were being judged on their merit, not on her intimidation. Jackson nodded. Agreed, he said. Implement the changes and monitor results closely. The adjustment is sound and will integrate smoothly with our existing systems. Encouraged by Jackson's calm authority, other executives began speaking up. One proposed a more efficient method of distributing energy to the northern colonies. Another suggested optimizing transport systems between habitats, and even the logistics officers offered ideas to improve resource allocation. The discussion, once stifled by fear, flowed freely, productive, and focused. Althea observed quietly, her sharp mind analyzing every word. She noted how Jackson's calm intervention had changed the dynamic, how reason and clarity were now driving the conversation instead of panic and intimidation. She realized that humanity's greatest asset was not wealth or influence. It was courage, intelligence, and adaptability. After hours of discussion, the boardroom had completed a full strategic review of the Lythera 9 project. Timelines were adjusted realistically, safety measures reinforced, and contingency plans refined. Jackson's calm leadership had allowed others to speak openly, and together they had created a plan far more robust than any individual could have produced. As the meeting wound down, Althea spoke once more. Mr. Riel, she said, her tone measured, but carrying acknowledgement. You have conducted yourself admirably. Your approach has yielded better results than I expected. I will consider your methods in future operations. Jackson inclined his head respectfully. Thank you, ma'am. I believe the project will succeed if we prioritize reason and collaboration over fear. I am seized that any created are. Althea's gaze lingered on him, a faint nod acknowledging not just his competence, but his courage. The room was silent for a moment, a rare occurrence in her presence. Then, she stood, meeting adjourned. As the board members filed out of the chamber, a quiet energy filled the room. Ideas had been shared, problems addressed, and a sense of collaboration had replaced fear. For many, it was the first time in years they had felt truly productive in Althea's presence. Jackson lingered briefly, watching the holographic projection of Lythera 9. The planet rotated slowly, a fragile gem in the vast black of space. He thought of his daughter, Lyra, imagining her walking on this new world one day, a future shaped by courage, reason, and human determination. He knew that challenges would continue, that fear would return in other forms, but he also knew that humanity's greatest strength was not fearlessness. It was the ability to act with calm purpose in the face of uncertainty. Althea approached him as he prepared to leave. You have potential, Mr. Riel, she said quietly. Do not let it be wasted. Continue to lead with clarity, and you may achieve more than you imagine. Jackson nodded, a small smile crossing his face. I will do my best, ma'am, for the project and for those who will rely on it. As he exited the boardroom, the hum of the orbital city surrounded him. The lights of Novaris reflected off the windows, casting golden reflections on the polished floor. Outside, ships moved gracefully through orbital lanes, colonists and engineers working together to expand humanity's reach. In that moment, Jackson felt something profound. Courage, when paired with reason, could influence even the most intimidating forces. Humanity's resilience and intelligence were not measured by wealth, power, or fear. They were measured by the ability to stand firm, to speak truth calmly, and to act for the greater good. The journey was far from over. Lythera 9 awaited, and countless challenges lay ahead. But for the first time, the room indeed, the city had seen that one person's courage could ripple outward, shifting the balance of power, inspiring others, and proving that humanity's strength was something no amount of wealth or fear could suppress. Jackson left the chamber with a sense of purpose. The galaxy was vast, uncertain, and full of dangers, but humanity, armed with courage and intelligence, could rise to meet them all. And that knowledge, quiet but powerful, fueled his determination as he prepared for the challenges yet to come. The orbital city of Novaris was quiet that evening, its lights shimmering like a sea of stars reflected on the surface of Lyria below. Inside the boardroom of Astra Prime, the atmosphere was different now. The room still carried the weight of responsibility, but the oppressive fear that had once ruled here had diminished. A subtle energy had replaced it, a spark of possibility, fueled by courage and reason. Jackson Riel returned the next day to continue discussions on the Lythera 9 colonization project. He had spent the night reviewing reports, simulations, and projections. Every detail mattered. Every calculation could influence the lives of future colonists and the success of the operation. And he knew that in this room, calm reasoning could still face resistance. Althea Vey entered the boardroom promptly. Her expression was neutral, though her eyes held curiosity. The executives and engineers, some still nervous, now spoke with more confidence. They had seen the impact of Jackson's calm intervention, and it encouraged them to participate. "Good morning," Althea said, her voice firm but without the threat it usually carried. "Let us continue." Jackson nodded respectfully. "Good morning, ma'am. I have reviewed the simulations overnight, and there are areas we can optimize before beginning the first wave of colonization." He activated a holographic projection, displaying Lythera 9 inches high resolution. Streams of rivers sparkled under simulated sunlight, and vegetation patterns moved subtly with projected wind and climate models. "The southern hemisphere," he explained, "remains the greatest challenge. Temperature fluctuations and soil instability could threaten initial settlements if we act too quickly. I propose we begin with controlled zones first, gradually expanding while monitoring changes." Althea leaned forward slightly, intrigued. "And how will you monitor these changes?" Jackson pointed to a series of satellites and drones hovering above the holographic map. "These systems track atmospheric conditions, soil composition, and ecosystem adaptation. The data is processed in real time, allowing immediate adjustments. If we detect anomalies, we intervene before problems escalate." A few executives whispered quietly among themselves. The clarity of Jackson's explanation contrasted sharply with previous meetings dominated by fear. This was logic, not panic. Strategy, not intimidation. Althea's gaze returned to Jackson. "You speak with certainty," she said. "But certainty alone does not guarantee success. Human error and unforeseen variables are inevitable." Jackson nodded. "I understand. That is why our plan is built with redundancy and human oversight. Machines are tools, humans make the decisions. Each action is reviewed, analyzed, and adjusted to ensure minimal risk. This is why I believe our method will succeed." A silence followed, heavy but not tense. The executives around the table were observing closely, inspired by his calm reasoning. For the first time, they felt that their voices could matter, that their input could contribute to a real solution, rather than be crushed by fear. Althea studied him carefully. Her life had been defined by control. Fear had been a tool she used to maintain order and dominance. Yet here was a man who challenged that order not with defiance, but with calm purpose. She recognized something she had rarely encountered: leadership that relied on reason, courage, and collaboration, rather than intimidation. "Very well," she said finally. "I want you to proceed. But be aware that failure will not be tolerated." Jackson inclined his head. "Understood, ma'am. We will take every precaution to ensure success." The meeting continued, and for hours, discussions flowed freely. Executives proposed improvements. Engineers suggested technical solutions, and data analysts highlighted potential risks. Jackson facilitated the discussion with calm authority, encouraging input and analyzing proposals logically. The room, once paralyzed by fear, had transformed into a hub of collaboration. As the hours passed, Althea observed silently. She noted how the room had shifted in her presence, how one person's courage could change the dynamic of an entire group. It was a lesson she had rarely needed, but now she realized its value. Power alone did not ensure success. Reason, courage, and human judgment were equally essential. Midway through the discussion, a technical advisor raised a concern. "Ma'am, sensors indicate that the southern hemisphere's temperature spikes could exceed projected limits. If not addressed, early settlements may face critical failure." Althea's gaze sharpened. "And your solution?" The advisor hesitated. "We could accelerate the deployment of stabilizers, but this carries risk." Jackson spoke calmly. "Risk can be managed, but haste can destroy the system entirely. We proceed gradually, as planned, while increasing monitoring frequency. Intervention will occur only if data indicates a genuine threat." Althea studied him, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Proceed as you suggest." The room collectively exhaled. A sense of relief spread. Jackson's calm had not only guided the project but had also guided Althea herself. His reasoning had convinced the most powerful figure in the room to reconsider instinctive reactions and trust in careful planning. As the discussion shifted to resource allocation, another executive suggested reallocating energy supplies from one sector to another. Traditionally, such ideas would have been dismissed or argued over heatedly. This time, Jackson facilitated discussion, weighing risks and benefits, consulting real-time data, and helping the team make a calculated decision. The result was a more efficient plan that increased the chances of success without introducing unnecessary risk. Althea observed this quietly. She realized that Jackson had not only preserved human safety and project integrity, but he had also elevated the entire team's capabilities. His calm courage had turned fear into productivity, hesitation into confidence, and uncertainty into a shared vision. Finally, as the meeting drew toward its conclusion, Jackson summarized the plan. "We begin with controlled settlements in stable zones, closely monitor environmental conditions, and expand gradually. Every decision is data-driven, every action reversible if necessary, and every life prioritized. This method ensures the highest probability of success while minimizing risk." Althea looked around the room. Executives nodded quietly. Engineers and analysts smiled, relieved that their ideas had been heard and integrated. For the first time, the room felt like a team rather than a chamber of fear. "You have done well," Althea said to Jackson, her voice calm but carrying a rare note of approval. "Your approach has ensured that this project will start with a solid foundation. I expect updates on progress, but I trust your judgment." Jackson nodded again, his mind already turning to the next steps. "Thank you, ma'am. I will ensure that every precaution is taken, and that every decision is informed by reason and data." As the boardroom emptied, Althea lingered, watching Jackson gather his materials. She had spent decades in control, relying on fear and authority to achieve results. Yet she had just witnessed something different: leadership through calm reasoning, courage, and respect for human life. It was effective, inspiring, and, she realized, rare. Jackson left the room and walked along the orbital deck. The city lights of Novaris stretching below him. Ships moved in orderly paths. Colonists and engineers working together to expand humanity's reach. He thought of Lyra, imagining her future among the thriving colonies. Every decision he made now could ripple across decades, shaping lives and worlds. He knew challenges would continue. There would be obstacles, unforeseen complications, and moments that tested courage and judgment. But he also knew that humanity's greatest strength lay not in wealth, fear, or dominance, but in intelligence, reason, and the ability to act calmly under pressure. And for the first time, Jackson saw a glimpse of change, even in Althea Vey, the unshakable force. The woman who had dominated everyone with fear had begun to recognize that humanity's greatest power was not in intimidation, but in courage, collaboration, and clear thinking. The turning point had arrived not with loud speeches, threats, or demonstrations of power, but with quiet courage, precise reasoning, and the simple act of standing firm in the face of fear. Jackson smiled faintly as he looked at the stars stretching beyond Novaris. The galaxy was vast, and humanity's challenges were only beginning. But if courage, intelligence, and reason could alter even the most intimidating boardroom on Astra Prime, then perhaps the future of human colonies could be bright. For the first time, he felt that the balance of power was shifting, not through wealth or authority, but through the quiet strength of one determined human being. And that strength, he knew, was limitless. The first light of Lyria's sun reflected on the windows of Astra Prime, painting the orbital city in shades of gold and amber. The boardroom, which had once been tense with fear, now carried a quiet energy of purpose. Jackson Riel arrived early, as always, reviewing the latest data streams from Lythra 9. The sensors were active, monitoring every environmental and atmospheric condition. Every reading, every measurement, was a testament to the meticulous planning he and his team had carried out. The success of the project, however, was far from guaranteed. Lythra 9 remained unpredictable, its ecosystems delicate and fragile. One wrong decision could jeopardize the future of the first human colonies. Yet, as he looked at the holographic projections hovering above the table, Jackson felt a cautious sense of optimism. The balance of reason, courage, and careful planning had brought them this far. Executives began arriving, their expressions now less tense, more confident. The previous fear that had dominated the room had transformed into something new, a shared sense of responsibility. Jackson could see it in their eyes, the spark of human determination. They had been inspired by his calm courage, and now, many were ready to act with the same clarity. Althea Vey entered, her presence still commanding, but her aura had shifted slightly. She no longer relied solely on fear. There was curiosity, a willingness to observe, and even a faint hint of respect. She had spent decades controlling everyone around her. Yet here was a single father who had taught her a lesson she hadn't anticipated. "Good morning," Althea said, her voice firm but composed. "Let's review the progress of the Lythra 9 project." Jackson nodded. "Good morning, ma'am. The environmental regulators are stable. The first controlled settlements have been established, and the colonists have begun integrating with the biotic systems. Preliminary data indicates that the growth rates of flora and the adaptation of fauna are exceeding projections. Energy systems are functioning efficiently, and emergency protocols have been successfully tested." He paused, allowing the data to sink in. The room watched silently, captivated by the precision of his words. The executives nodded quietly, impressed by the seamless integration of planning, technology, and human oversight. One of the senior engineers, a man named Terran Kale, spoke up. "The Southern Hemisphere is responding well to gradual stabilization. Temperature fluctuations are within predicted limits. We can expand the settlement's next cycle with minimal risk." Althea raised an eyebrow, considering the statement. "And if unexpected variables appear?" she asked. Jackson's voice was steady. "Our monitoring systems will detect anomalies immediately. Interventions are designed to be swift, targeted, and reversible. The plan prioritizes human safety above all else. We do not gamble with lives, we act with reason." The room remained quiet for a moment, as if absorbing the implications. Executives who had once trembled in fear now realized something important. The success of this project was not reliant on intimidation, power, or wealth. It was reliant on courage, intelligence, and calm reasoning. Althea studied Jackson. She had spent years relying on fear to control outcomes, yet she had never seen a method so effective as calm leadership combined with reason. "You have changed the dynamic of this project," she said. "I see the value in your approach. I will not interfere unless absolutely necessary." Jackson inclined his head respectfully. "Thank you, ma'am. I believe that human judgment, guided by data and reason, ensures the best outcomes." As the meeting continued, ideas flowed freely. Engineers suggested improvements to habitat layouts, resource managers optimized distribution channels, and analysts recommended adjustments based on real-time feedback. The collaboration was seamless, productive, and inspiring. Mara, The young engineer who had trembled during the first meeting spoke confidently. We've improved water circulation in the northern settlements. Crop yield is projected to increase by 18%, Althea observed quietly, acknowledging the change. No longer were decisions dictated by fear, merit, and reasoning guided the team. Jackson's calm courage had created an environment where ideas could thrive. The discussion shifted to colonist well-being. Jackson projected simulations of living conditions, food availability, and environmental safety. All metrics indicate that colonists are adapting well. Health levels are stable, and morale is high. We will continue to monitor closely and intervene if necessary. Althea nodded, impressed. It seems that courage, planning, and teamwork have achieved what intimidation could not. The boardroom, once a place of fear and silence, now felt alive with collaboration. Executives discussed challenges openly, engineers contributed solutions confidently, and analysts provided critical insights without hesitation. The transformation was palpable. As the meeting drew to a close, Althea addressed the room. "Mr. Riel," she said, her tone carrying an unusual note of respect. "Your approach has not only guided this project to success, but has also inspired everyone in this room. Courage and reason can achieve what fear never could. Humanity's potential is clear, and your leadership is proof of that." Jackson remained composed, his voice humble, yet firm. "Thank you, ma'am. The project's success is the result of collaboration, careful planning, and the dedication of everyone involved. I am merely facilitating what humans are capable of achieving when fear does not paralyze them." The executives exchanged glances, their expressions reflecting pride and renewed purpose. For many, this meeting was a turning point. A reminder of what humans could achieve when courage, reason, and collaboration replaced fear and intimidation. As the room emptied, Jackson remained briefly, looking at the holographic projection of Lythera 9. The planet rotated slowly, a fragile yet thriving world, the result of careful planning, human ingenuity, and courage in the face of uncertainty. Althea approached him quietly. "You have done well," she said, her voice calm but sincere. "You have proven that humanity's greatest strength lies not in wealth, authority, or fear, but in intelligence, courage, and the ability to act with reason under pressure." Jackson nodded. "I hope this approach can inspire others, ma'am. Humanity's future depends on reason, collaboration, and the courage to act when it matters most." Althea studied him for a long moment, then gave a faint nod of approval. "It is rare to see such clarity and calm in the presence of fear and power. You have my respect, Mr. Riel. Continue guiding humanity forward." Jackson smiled faintly, feeling a sense of fulfillment. He thought of his daughter, Lyra, imagining her walking among thriving colonies, exploring worlds made possible by human courage and ingenuity. Every decision, every careful step, had contributed to a future where humans could stand proud, confident in their abilities to shape the cosmos. As he left the boardroom, the orbital city of Novaris stretched below him, alive with lights, movement, and life. Ships moved through orbital lanes, colonists worked in harmony with technology, and humanity's influence extended across the stars. The galaxy was vast, and challenges remained. But for the first time, it felt as though humans had proven something important. Their courage, intelligence, and collaboration could triumph over fear, uncertainty, and even the most intimidating forces. Jackson walked along the observation deck, feeling the quiet hum of the city around him. He knew that this was only the beginning. Lythera 9 would grow, colonies would thrive, and humans would continue to reach further into the stars. And if they faced challenges, they would face them with courage, intelligence, and reason. The story of Lythera 9 would become a symbol of humanity's potential, its resilience, and its strength. A single father, standing firm in the face of fear, had reminded the galaxy that even one person could inspire change. Even one person could shift the balance of power, prove the value of courage, and demonstrate the limitless potential of humanity. As Jackson looked up at the stars, he felt a quiet pride. The galaxy was vast and uncertain, But humans had shown that their greatest strength was not in domination or intimidation, but in courage, reason, and collaboration. Lythera 9 was only the beginning, and humanity, he knew, would continue to rise.